Hi, I'm here with Paul, and we're going to talk about some of the more intermediate stroke advanced features of the Alpha range of DSLRs. There's an A on the dial. What's that all about?
So A stands for Aperture Control, and this is one of the most useful parts of one of these cameras, and it's actually where, if you want to start getting creative and creating pictures that you can say, you know, I did that, it's with the aperture that's most effective and most obvious when you come to look at your pictures back later on. The aperture is actually in the lens. Now, whether you've got a compact system camera like your Nex 5 there, or the Alpha 55 as I've got here, the aperture is always in the lens, and it's the first contact point you've got with light when you're taking a picture. And you're able to restrict the light that passes through the lens into the camera.
Okay. Now,
what it actually does when you're taking a picture is it opens and closes. And it will close to a preset position that when you're in aperture control, you have preset. And it affects something called depth of field.
Okay.
Now, this sounds like an agricultural term, the depth of the field. What does this mean? It's the amount that's in focus in the picture. You focus with the autofocus on the subject.
Okay.
The depth of field is the effect of the aperture controlling how much extra is in focus behind and in front of the subject. There's a ratio for this. When you're photographing a subject in landscape or telephoto, there is going to be 2/3 of extra depth of field behind the subject. There's going to be 1/3 depth of field in front of the subject for every adjustment that you make with the aperture. That's slightly different in macro, and we'll probably do a different video for that to explain, because it's a bit more specialist. Now, why do you want to do this? Well, because you can create a fantastic effect with depth of field. You can put a subject in isolation with a very blurred background, or you can create a almost infinite depth of field throughout the whole scene, and it will vary shot to shot as you want to do it. And controlling depth of field is one of the most enjoyable and rewarding practices that you can make. And we're going to show you a series of situations now through these various locations as we come across them, with different lenses, different aperture controls and different techniques, and they give you a better picture. So aperture control is really important because it controls the way you're looking at the picture, but the one thing you do need to be careful of is that as you're restricting the amount of light coming through the lens, particularly when you're closing the aperture down, there is a risk that the shutter speed is going to get slower and slower. That causes a problem because any camera shake will be more evident, and also any subject movement. It's quite a windy day here today, and the flower heads are going to be doing this, so you're going to end up with an unsharp picture if you're not too careful. So you have to find the balance between depth of field and shutter speed control as well as a factor of the aperture. Now, one of the great things I've got on the Alpha 55 here that unfortunately there isn't on the Nex 5 is depth of field preview. It's a little button here at the bottom of the camera, which actually closes the iris down whilst you're composing your picture, so you're seeing the effect live before you even take the picture.
Wow, okay.
There's a lovely scene here, let's call it, where we've got these beautiful yellow flowers in the foreground, we've got this path going up into the distance. So I'm going to take a nice picture here. I'm going to do it in portrait orientation. I focus about 1/3 of the way into the shot, and I'm looking through, and I close the depth of field preview down, and I can see the effect. So I'm going to close the aperture a bit more, and now at f11, f13, that looks quite good. I'm getting focus from the foreground to the background, and I take the shot. I've got it, and I'm going to show you that there.
And you're closing the aperture down with the dial wheel, the control wheel?
Yes, I'm closing it with the input dial on the front, and there's the finished picture.
Fantastic.
Yeah, very nice.
And so with the Nex,
the display is slightly different. You've got a scale at the bottom of the display.
Yep.
You've got shutter speed and aperture, and you rotate the input wheel on the back of the camera this time to control aperture. So you're letting in more or less light, and then when you're ready, just take the shot.
Perfect. So you've just showed us wide depth of field, and this is now shallow depth of field.
Yeah, so you've got the benefit there in the Nex 5 with an 18-200 lens. I'm going to change my lens because I've only got the 18-55 on at the moment. So I'm going to take that one off. And in my bag here I've got the 18-200. So I'm going to take the cap off of that and put that straight on the camera. Put the cap back on the other lens, as you always should do, to keep them clean and free of debris. So that's on there. Now, there's a really nice picture to be taken here. We've got the yellow flowers in the foreground, and then in the background we've got the barn with the rusty barn. So I'm going to show where you can actually create a picture with very little depth of field and with a great deal of depth of field.
Okay.
Just by simply controlling the aperture, and I'm going to stay in exactly the same place and leave the lens setting exactly as it is as well. So first I'm going to compose the picture. I'm going to focus about a third of the way into the shot, and with my depth of field preview again I can see that I'm getting focus from the flowers right the way through to the background, and wait for the gusts of wind to die down a little bit. Lovely. But the shutter speed is now at a 30th of a second whilst I'm at f32. If I open the aperture, so I'm letting in as much light as possible through the lens, I'm focused now on the flowers. The background is completely out of focus, and it's making for quite a pleasant picture. There we go. There's the effect. And you can do exactly the same thing with your next. So you've focused about a third of the way into the shot, and you're at f36 at the moment. Take the picture, and then open your aperture all the way, so low f number, letting in as much light as possible. That's it, f6.3 and get the picture. Lovely.